Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Another week, another flood of AWS updates, this time covering October 6th to the 10th. Our job today, not just reading release notes, we're digging in, synthesizing, trying to figure out the why behind these features for you, the builders.
Yeah, it was definitely a high-velocity week, and you can really see a clear focus emerging. It feels like a two-pronged approach. On one hand, they're pushing hard on raw performance, especially compute and databases, lots of silicon updates. And on the other, they're layering on smart automation to make using all that power easier, more efficient, some really practical stuff.
Exactly. So to tackle it all, we'll follow the speed. We're starting with the EC2 Race Intel AMD Graviton. They will have the foundations, networking, and storage. After that, AI, management tools, and finally, developer and analytics updates. Ready to dive into the engine room.
Let's do it.
All right, first up, compute-optimized instances. The new C8i and C8i Flex are now generally available, running on custom Intel Xeon 6 chips.
That's right. And the custom part is key, only available on AWS. It shows that vertical integration paying off immediately.
How so? What's the payoff?
Well, they're claiming up to 15% better price performance right off the bat. Plus, and this is pretty big, 2.5 times more memory bandwidth compared to the C7i. That's a serious jump.
15% better price performance. So if you're running C7i now, is this like an immediate must-migrate situation?
He makes a very strong case, yeah. Especially for common workloads like web servers, standard enterprise apps, caching. AWS is really pushing C8i Flex as the easy button for getting those gains. Strategically, it feels like they're accelerating the commoditization of that mid-tier compute, making it harder for others to keep up on pure efficiency.
Okay, moving from general compute. What about storage-heavy stuff? We saw new Intel instances there too, the i7i and i7i. i7i landed in Europe, Spain.
Correct. And the i7i's big story is latency. It uses those 5th-gen Intel Xeons, but the real headline is up to 50% lower storage I/O latency than the i4i.
50% lower latency. How?
That comes down to the 3rd-gen AWS Nitro SSDs they're using for things like busy databases or real-time logging, shaving off that much latency per operation. It's a huge deal.
And the i7e. That one landed in South America, right? Focus more on density.
Exactly. The i7e boasts up to 120 terabytes of local NVMe storage. They're calling it the highest density in the cloud. Think massive data lakes, high-throughput analytics, that kind of thing. A real monster instance.
But Intel isn't the only game in town. AMD fired back too.
Oh, yeah. We got the general availability of the Amazon EC2 M8A instances. These are running the 5th-gen AMD EPYC chips, codenamed Turin, and they're putting up strong numbers. Up to 30% higher performance and 19% better price performance compared to the previous M7A, plus about 45% more memory bandwidth. So the choice between architectures, it's definitely alive and well. You really have options to fine-tune cost versus performance now.
Okay, let's pivot to Graviton, because Graviton 4, the latest generation, really started rolling out more widely this week, especially for storage-intensive workloads, those GD instances.
Yes, the local storage variants, C8GD, MAGD, and RAGD. They popped up in more regions like Ireland, Sydney, Malaysia, Canada. And this is where it gets really interesting, especially if you run databases. These Graviton 4 instances pack up to, 11.4 TB of local NVMe. Performance-wise, they're up to 30% faster than the Graviton 3 versions. But the number that really jumped out at me was the claim for database workloads specifically. Up to 40% higher performance for I/O-intensive database workloads, just from switching to the new Graviton generation.
Wow, 40%.
It's just like that. Pretty much. And you see that reflected directly in the managed database service, too. Aurora PostgreSQL added support for the RAG instances. Those are Graviton 4 in more regions like Canada, Singapore, Seoul. Again, they're promising up to 40% performance improvement and nearly 29% better price performance compared to the Graviton 3 R7G instances. Plus, they have bigger sizes now, up to 48x large, with an 8:1 memory to vCPU ratio and faster DDR5 memory. Graviton 4 is really looking like the efficiency leader for demanding Aurora workloads now.
And one last Graviton note. The older Graviton 3-based CSATA GD expanded into Zurich. Not the newest chip, but still relevant.
Yeah, I think so, especially because they keep highlighting the energy efficiency angle. Up to 60% less energy for the same performance compared to similar by 86 EC2 instances. For companies focused on sustainability, that's still a very compelling point.
Okay, so the compute engine's got a major speed boost, but they need fuel, right? Let's talk about the foundational services, networking, and storage that keep everything running. Any big shifts there?
Definitely a couple of key ones focused on sort of future-proofing and scale. First, Amazon DynamoDB now supports IPv6.
The IPv6 transition continues.
Yeah.
So you can use IPv6 addresses from your VPC to talk to DynamoDB now.
Exactly. For your tables, streams, DAX clusters, even through private link endpoints. It's not just ticking a compliance box. It really helps tackle that looming IPv4 address exhaustion problem. And for big organizations with complex networks, it just simplifies the stack, getting towards that dual stack or IPv6 only future.
Makes sense. And staying within the VPC, there was an update for VPC Lattice. Something about IP addresses on the gateway ENIs.
Right. So VPC Lattice resource gateways, which handle traffic between services, now let you configure how many IPv4 addresses get assigned per network interface, ENI. The default is 16, which sounds like maybe a small detail.
Yeah, why does that matter?
Well, think of those 16 addresses as like lanes on a highway entrance ramp. If you have a really high volume internal service connected via Lattice, maybe a critical cache or database, and suddenly 1,000 requests hit that gateway at once, that default limit could become a bottleneck. Being able to increase that number means you can handle bigger bursts of concurrent connections without errors or throttling, more control over capacity, basically.
Got it. Okay, shifting from networking to storage, the big one. Amazon EBS IO2 Block Express. It landed in the China regions. This is AWS's top-tier block storage, right?
Oh, yeah. This is their answer to the fastest on-prem SANs. The numbers are pretty staggering. Up to 256,000 IOPS, 4 gigabytes per second throughput, massive 64 terabyte volume sizes, and crucially, consistent sub-millisecond latency with 5 nines durability.
Sub-millisecond. So this is aimed squarely at those super demanding, latency-sensitive workloads, like SAP Asia, big Oracle databases.
Exactly. It's designed to remove pretty much any lingering performance objections someone might have about moving those absolute top-tier mission-critical systems to the cloud. And there's a cost angle, too. If you're already on IOM volumes and need more than 32,000 IOPS, moving to IO2 Block Express can be up to 50% cheaper per IOPS, often with zero downtime for the upgrade. It's a win on performance and potentially fine ops.
Okay, powerful infrastructure updates. Let's move up the stack to AI, automation, and management. The big headline here was Amazon Quick Suite going GA, they're calling it. Agentic AI-powered teammates.
Yeah, agentic. And that word choice is important, I think. It signals a move beyond just being a chatbot or an information retrieval tool.
What do they mean by agentic exactly? How is it different?
It means it doesn't just find information for you. It can actually initiate actions based on that information. It can perform multi-step tasks. Think about it retrieving insights not just from the web, but also digging through all your internal documents, your databases, even third-party apps like Salesforce or Jira all at once. So the goal isn't just better reports. It's about potentially automating complex workflows, things like responding to RFPs, processing invoices, maybe even creating and updating tickets automatically.
Automating workflows. That's ambitious. What about security? Enterprises will be wary of feeding internal data into AI.
Absolutely critical point. And AWS is very explicit here.
No.
They guarantee that your queries and your data used with Quick Suite are never used to train their underlying models. That's non-negotiable for most companies, so it's good they're clear on that.
Okay, sticking with AI, but maybe more immediately practical. Amazon Q Developer got a pricing feature.
Yes. This one seems really useful. You can now ask Amazon Q, just using natural language, questions about AWS service pricing, or estimate the cost of a particular workload setup.
Oh, that's cool. So instead of wrestling with the price list API or spreadsheets, you can just ask something like, what's the monthly cost for 1 million SNS email notifications?
Exactly. And it pulls the data directly from the official pricing APIs to give you an estimate right there in the console. Should speed up those early stage architecture discussions quite a bit.
Definitely. All right, moving from AI to just plain old good governance, the AWS Service Quotas automatic quota management feature is now generally available. This sounds like a lifesaver.
It really does. We've all been there, right? Running auto-scaling applications, things are humming along, and then bam, you hit a service quota limit you didn't anticipate. Production grinds to a halt.
That 2 a.m. panicking.
Yeah. So this new feature basically watches your quota usage for you, and it proactively notifies you email, SMS, Slack, whatever you set up before you actually hit the ceiling. It lets you request an increase or adjust things before it impacts your application's ability to scale. And the best part, it's available at no extra cost. That's genuinely a sleep-saving feature for ops teams.
Nice. Okay, let's look at the developer world and then wrap up with contact centers. For developers, Kubernetes updates.
Yeah, Amazon EKS and EKS distro now support Kubernetes version 1.34. Couple of key things in this release. One is projected service account tokens, which makes pulling container images more secure. The other is better support for setting resource requests and limits at the pod level, which simplifies things when you have multiple containers running inside a single pod. Small, incremental improvements, but important for security and resource management.
Gotcha. And then a big one for data teams, I think. Amazon Redshift serverless got cheaper to start.
Much cheaper. Previously, the minimum size for a Redshift serverless warehouse was 32 RPUs, Redshift processing units, which could be, frankly, overkill and too expensive for smaller projects, or just trying it out.
Right. 32 RPUs might be too much for just dev test.
Exactly. Now they've lowered the minimum base capacity all the way down to just 8 RPUs. Since each RPU comes with 16 gigs of memory, this makes it way more accessible. Suddenly, it's a viable option for those test and development environments, smaller production workloads, or proof-of-concept teams. It really lowers the barrier to entry for serverless data warehousing.
That seems like a really significant move. Okay, finally, a flurry of updates for Amazon Connect, the cloud contact center service. Like a lot focused on operational efficiency.
Yeah, definitely aimed at making life easier for contact center managers and supervisors. There were 3 main things that stood out. First, agent scheduling configuration got better. You can now copy existing schedules like take a weekday shift and quickly make a weekend variant and do bulk edits like updating time zones for a group of new hires all at once. Less manual clicking.
Okay, streamlining scheduling. What else?
Second, agent schedule adherence notifications. This is about automation. Instead of supervisors constantly watching dashboards to see if agents are sticking to their schedules, they can set up rules. Like if an agent's adherence drops below, say, 85% for 15 minutes, automatically send an email or text alert via EventBridge. Let supervisors focus on coaching instead of monitoring.
That makes sense. And the third Connect update.
Custom service level calculations. Managers now have more control over how that key metric, service level, is actually calculated. They can define time thresholds and choose which types of contacts count towards it. For example, maybe they want to include callbacks but exclude calls abandoned in under 5 seconds. It lets them align the metric with what really matters for their specific business. Oh, and also new case APIs. These let you programmatically link related cases together. Think like one flight cancellation impacts hundreds of customers. You can link all those cases so the agent sees the full context instantly. Should lead to faster resolutions.
Got it. Lots of practical tweaks for Connect users. And just to quickly round things out, 2 administrative updates caught my eye. RDS for DB2 backups.
Right, Amazon RDS for DB2 now supports native database backups. The key here is selectivity. Instead of backing up the entire instance, which might have multiple databases, you can now back up individual databases within that instance. This can save a lot on storage costs compared to full snapshots, and also makes things like migrating a single database easier.
And finally, AWS Marketplace currency expansion.
Yeah, for usage-based private offers where you pay based on consumption, Marketplace now supports transactions in euros, British pounds, Australian dollars, and Japanese yen, in addition to USD. Just makes it easier for global companies to buy and sell software through Marketplace without worrying about foreign exchange conversions and risks. Simplifies procurement.
Okay, wow, that was a lot for 1 week.
It really was. Looking back, you definitely see that theme. Push the performance envelope with new silicon like Graviton 4, C8i, M8A. But then immediately pair it with practical AI and automation quick suite, the quota management, to actually harness that power effectively. It feels like the pace of core infrastructure improvement isn't slowing down at all. You constantly need to reevaluate if you're using the best, most efficient tools available.
Yeah, for me, the number that really sticks is that 15% price performance jump on the C8i Flex. That makes the migration argument really compelling for a lot of standard workloads. But almost equally important is that Redshift serverless starting point dropping to 8 RPUs, making that powerful analytics engine accessible to smaller teams or for experimentation. That's a big strategic shift, I think.
Agreed on both points. And maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. With things like Quick Suite being positioned as agentic AI teammates that can actually do complex multi-step tasks across systems, how much will roles like sysadmin, developer, even internal business analysts change in the next year or so? Will it shift away from doing the manual steps themselves towards just defining the high-level goals and letting these AI agents figure out the how? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought. Well, that's our deep dive for this week. Get into the docs, explore those new compute options and automation features. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everyone. See you next time.